Okay, perfect. Okay, awesome. So I say, hey, let's get going. Simone, if anybody comes in, I'll ask you just to kindly let them in. But today we are with Kelly Nolan. Super excited to have her here. Kelly Nolan is a best-selling author, a hormone expert, and we were just chatting before that. Her and I met at one of the big fitness conferences in Toronto, and just sort of the stars aligned. And hopefully Kelly will share a bunch of information with everybody here on this recording or on this call, just to help you basically learn more about hormones, learn about your estrogen levels, perhaps learn about testosterone levels for any males on here as well that may be watching it, because there is a lot of benefit to understanding how this can affect not only your workouts, but just everyday life. And perhaps maybe if you have a goal of weight loss, or maybe you're actually losing too much weight, hormones do play a big part in a lot of the everyday battles that some of us may be going through. So Kelly, I'll let you take over here. You can introduce yourself as well. Hopefully I didn't butcher the, but go right ahead. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And once again, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to be in a community of like-minded people and sharing my expertise and just working, just creating a nice teaching platform where I hope, once you and I are finished, having our little session here for everybody, that people will really jump on board and ask questions. I really want that for them. So I've actually been a pharmacist for over 25 plus 30 years. And I started in integrative medicine also probably 25 years ago. So it's been an interesting road for me. And I've always said I've gone from A to C. I was a traditional pharmacist. I became an integrated practitioner, a women's health expert. I ran my own pharmacy for 10 years where I actually made bioidentical hormones, which are hormone creams that I made for clients. But I always still had that more of a passion for the integrative side, which is working with natural supplements. So after 10 years, I actually sold the pharmacy and I concentrated solely on natural supplements and marrying them with proper hormone testing and putting together very specific programs for clients based on their own natural chemistry. In November of 2022, I did my book did go live and became a #1 bestseller, and that took me actually a year and a half. It's called Restore Your Life, and everyone's asking me when I'm going to write the male version, and I really should get to that because men are very important too. And writing the book has been a real game changer for me. And they say that we all have some expertise to share, and I really do believe that. Like even for you, Mike, you don't realize that you just speak a language every day and you know it so well. And it seems so simple to you, but to other people, it's really not. So writing the book was really my way of sharing my knowledge and giving women answers that they're seeking. And what I love about the book is there's some stories in there of real women that have been in my life and my communities. So it's a nice little thread of a story through the chapters, with also teaching, of course, a little bit of science, which is always important to me.
Awesome. Yeah, so I had actually a quick question for you. So like why, we get this a lot, but why is menopause such perhaps like a challenging time for a lot of women?
I think it's pretty simple. We're very unprepared. We're not paying attention. We're busy. We're overwhelmed with responsibility of home, career, children, and all of a sudden, wow, we're like 50 going, what happened? I didn't see that coming. And I think it's the same way for men too. And we really don't know where to go for those answers either. We don't know where to go. You go to your doctor, he doesn't give you the answers. Maybe you pop into what I call the Wild West of the health food store, but then you're really making some assumptions of what you need. And I always say, don't make assumptions, make sure you're getting the answers that really match your own chemistry.
Yeah, and speaking of assumptions, like what are some of the assumptions that you're seeing, like your clients and people that you're working with having about menopause?
Well, women, for example, will always assume that their estrogen is low. In fact, they'll say to me, I don't have any estrogen left. And I would say, well, that's not scientifically possible because you can't function without estrogen. And men will also assume that their testosterone is low. And to be honest, that's not always true. They could be high estrogen and their testosterone could be fine, but because their estrogen is high, it's blocking the ability of that testosterone to work effectively. And in actuality, what's happening is
How is it working?
their testosterone is converting to estrogen.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, we like as men, some of the symptoms that we've encountered is, you know, there's some of the symptoms men may be having is like low sex drive. Maybe they have hair loss, things like that, that could be affected by, you know, either high estrogen, low testosterone. What are some of the ways, you know, for any men that are on this call or watching this recording at a later date, like what are some of the ways that they can perhaps naturally boost, I guess, maybe testosterone levels? Would that be a right way to frame that?
Well, again, you don't want to make an assumption that it's testosterone. Their testosterone could be fine. So the key for everybody, including women, is to get proper testing. And the proper testing is done with a saliva hormone test. If you make some assumptions, then you could really be putting yourself in harm's way. An example is a woman in menopause going to her doctor, and the doctor assumes that the client needs estrogen and progesterone without proper testing, not realizing that that woman could actually be estrogen dominant. So what happens for me is they come into my community and I test them, find out they're actually estrogen dominant and they've been on this medication, and now we're backtracking. So the same goes for men. Of course, they're getting the symptoms of low testosterone. So you have to determine, is their testosterone low or is their estrogen high? Because if you keep giving them medicinal testosterone, their body's just going to keep converting it to estrogen. So they're still going to be in that same place. So for men also, you have to know where they are at this time, what their chemistry is, and what needs to be corrected, and what's the proper method of correcting that for them.
What do you see more of? I mean, you do this every day. What are you seeing more of?
For men?
Men and women.
You know, I can never predict it, to be honest. Recently for women, I'm going to say I've been seeing more high estrogen, but that doesn't mean that I assume that everybody's going to be in that place. Women, like a lot of women, for example, that are overweight could be storing estrogen. Men that have a belly could be storing estrogen. It's not, we always make that assumption and jokes that they're drinking too much beer, but their body is converting estrogen. And the other piece of that we haven't touched on yet is what about their cortisol levels? Right. So cortisol levels are also another strong influencer in how the interaction is of these hormones. So I guess my point is we're not looking at one hormone, we're actually looking at 5. And you're looking at that collectively along with their history, their medical history. You know, now you go outside the realm of hormones and you start talking about, are they insulin resistant? Are they diabetic? Do they have high cholesterol? Is a woman on thyroid medication? So there's a number of pieces to that. So I always say everybody tells a story. You know, everybody tells a story. And that's what I say to clients, what's your story? You know, we do a saliva hormone test, but there's other pieces to that tells a story of why you're here at this point, at this time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. Tell me more about the book. Like, what was your passion for writing the book? Obviously, you're very passionate about this, but what was the main reason that you decided to I guess get the book out there?
It was one of those weird events, you know, during COVID where all those master classes and webinars were coming into your inbox and you didn't know where they were coming from. And I listened to one weekend. It was they were interviewing an author, Dan Janelle, who wrote a book called Write a Book in a Flash. So Dan Janelle really broke down for me the simplicity of writing a book, that for most of us by this point in our career, we've written a lot of blogs, articles. We have a lot of, you know, education to share, a lot of experiences. So you don't have to write, you're not going to write a big book, because reality in our world now is people don't have a long attention span. So what you do is you start to build out, you know, 10 chapters. You know, like my book's 180 pages. It's, for me, I think it's just the right size book. So he really spoke loudly to me how it was going to be easy for me to accomplish this. However, it did take more work than I thought, you know, because if you want to write a #1 bestseller, you're not going to write it in a flash, because you're going to put a lot of thought and you're going to put a lot of creativity into it. So it really, for me, with my life experience while I was writing the book, even, it became a very well-rounded platform with an emphasis for women on self-care. So there's 2 sections to the book. There's a teaching and the science in the beginning, and then there's a lot of resource tools in the back where women can, start to create their own integrative plan. I wanted it to be a very interactive book where women, I tell them, like, take your highlighter out, your pen, start making notes. So that's how I read books now. I used to keep them all nice and tidy. Now I get my highlighter out because I can easily go back and review what I want to review.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. Like, the book is fantastic. So if anybody wants to get the book, we'll have a link for it after. But before we get into that, we discussed a bit about cortisol levels. You kind of touched on that a little bit. I actually had a question from a client that came in just before we can attend the event, and they were wondering, when is the best time to exercise to help with their cortisol levels? So they were wondering, hey, I'm going to exercise in the evening, but it's not going to raise my cortisol levels. Am I going to have detrimental effects? So can you speak to that question?
You may have some knowledge on this also. I mean, my understanding and reading is, I guess it's a tenuous balance, right? If someone has really high cortisol, we test morning cortisol. If their cortisol is really high, should they be doing really intense workouts?
Right.
However, on average, they do tell us also that exercise lowers cortisol. So there is a huge benefit for us to exercising. I think what we need to do, though, is look at all the different pieces. So, like, an example is, I've had trainers come to me because they can't release weight. And their first go-to, which is a natural response, is they're going to pump up their exercise because that's what they know best. However, if they're not balancing their hormones, that's not going to work for them. In reality, they're working against themselves because now they're going excessively in that area. It's all about taking inventory, I believe, in all areas. I'm not going to touch on stress management, but today I would say what we're looking at taking inventory on is your nutrition, your exercise or your motion, and your hormone balance. Even young people, that exercise a lot, if they don't eat properly, are they going to reap the full benefits of that? If you're 50 years old and you're exercising well and your nutrition is lined up and your hormones aren't balanced, are you going to reap the full benefits of that exercise? You can't possibly. And I've had those conversations with my trainer that I love very much, but she's young, she's in her 30s. And I said to her, understand, women my age will not release weight with you unless they balance their hormones. It's the undercurrent that's driving that weight gain for them.
Yeah, so well said. And I know hormones is such a big part of everything that is happening here. I've seen it firsthand, like some of our clients with success stories that just balance those hormone levels. So excited to have you here. Listen, I want to open up the floor. If anybody has questions as well, I just don't want this to be a Q&A between Kelly and I. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to jump in. You can type them in the chat. We'll start taking questions as well. If not, I'll keep firing off some more questions because I want to pick your brain while you're on here. But feel free, anybody, to type questions in the chat. We'll get to them and answer your questions here while we've got Kelly on. So while we wait for that, Kelly, I wrote a couple of questions down because I didn't want to forget them. Can you talk a little bit about adrenal fatigue? That is something that's been popping up a lot as well lately on my news feed in particular. Can you explain adrenal fatigue to our audience?
Well, what I explain to clients, because it comes up quite a bit in the hormone tests that I do for them, is a lot of them are suffering from adrenal fatigue. However, I tell them it's not a diagnosis, but it is a common symptom for both men in andropause and women in perimenopause and menopause. And what it means is that their adrenal gland, which is a little gland that sits on top of the kidneys, is not in balance. And then we're looking at 2 specific hormones for that, cortisol and another one called DHEA. If their cortisol is high, which is fairly common, they're basically, we say they're wired but tired all the time. their cortisol is always fired up, which takes a lot of energy from them. The cortisol can influence their sleep patterns. It can spike their blood sugar. It can affect their weight. It negatively affects their thyroid function. So unfortunately, we need cortisol. Of course, it's our stress, release, our stress adaptogen. However, if it's really high, it's going to start to work against us in some degrees also.
Awesome. Looks like we have a question in the chat. How do hormones affect weight gain? Let me just look at that question again. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the question.
Yeah.
How do hormones affect weight gain?
Yeah.
Again, there's multiple threads to that. So hormones affect weight gain in many different ways, which is why we do the hormone test to look at those 5 different hormone levels, because all those hormones have the probability of negatively affecting that client's ability to release weight. So estrogen, for example, if estrogen is high and it's stored in fat cells, it's going to be more challenging for that client to release weight. If their cortisol is high, it's going to affect their thyroid function, but it's also going to also you have to look at the nutrition of that, in that if that client is eating high sugar, then that's going to spike their cortisol, spikes their blood sugar, which again can increase their body's ability to even gain weight throughout the night, because they cannot balance their blood sugar. So sometimes I say to clients, you have to wonder, are you diabetic, or is your cortisol high, or is it both? Hormones are, I think, when you get to your 50s, they're one of the biggest influencers in your ability to release weight. And then we start maybe interfering unknowingly. We end up with certain disease states and we're put on medication, and then the hormones are affected even more. An example is cholesterol medication. Cholesterol is actually a building block for hormones. So you in your 50s, maybe your doctor says you have high cholesterol, puts you on a cholesterol medication, and really what they're doing is they're taking away that the tools, the building blocks that you need to chronologically maintain your hormone levels. So that becomes a tenuous balance, I think, for us too, is deciding, the necessity to be on certain medications, which sometimes we have to, but then we need to understand the science of how that is negatively affecting our hormone levels.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Would you still treat someone on cholesterol medication as well?
Sorry, does Simone have a question?
No, I was saying, would you still treat someone on cholesterol medication?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, knowing what, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's important to be, I'm a very transparent person. So I think it's important to be transparent to people, to be logical to them, to help them to understand the good and the bad of their medication. We're not telling them to come off, we're just teaching them. And sort of interlocking again the science of when you get that saliva test back, and then you look at their health assessment, you can help them to understand even more effectively why their body is not releasing weight at this time.
Okay, and the question I had was, we get a lot of clients who basically are telling us, I'm at that phase of my life where I'm going through menopause. What I think for my question is, what should they be doing right away in terms of treatment, or I guess trying to make it work with their exercise program and nutrition so that they can actually reap the benefits of still achieving their goals, whether it's weight loss or whatever it is?
I always say the first step is to get the proper testing done. However, let's backtrack a bit and also take inventory. Are they exercising properly? I mean, that's your expertise. So obviously your clients are. What's their nutrition like? The third piece is, have they had their hormones properly tested? And do they have a treatment plan to match that template of their hormones at this time? So what we're looking at is this is the hormone test provides us with a roadmap. I always say to clients, are you going to go on a trip without a map, or do you know where you're going? So you want that map because you want to know where you're going. You don't want to randomly pick up supplements that I'm not saying they're going to harm you, but they're not going to serve you, because you don't know where you're going basically until you have that roadmap. So step number one, from my perspective, is get a saliva hormone test, which is a template of 5 different hormones. Get your hormones properly tested, and then, like I said, then you'll know exactly where you're heading. You'll know exactly what areas need to be treated, what are the most out of balance, even what dosage of supplements would you take based on that hormone test.
Awesome. We have another question in the chat. I'm 64 and I have noticed a huge change in my body since the early days of menopause in my mid-50s. In my mid-50s, I was on HRT, which my physician now declines to prescribe due to cardiovascular risks.
Sorry, what is the question of that? What would the next steps be at 64 then? And that's the case.
Yeah, Gwyneth, if you want to expand on that, feel free to type more in the chat, or even unmute yourself if it's easier. Yeah, we have another comment. My experience is that doctors don't really test all hormones, so they throw medication at us. Is that true? Well, I guess it is a question.
Well, clients would get upset with me, more often women, because our tendency is to go to our doctor for answers. So they go to their doctor for answers, and their doctor doesn't give them anything to follow, and they get very frustrated with that. However, I would say to them, look at it this way. Perhaps your doctor's just done you a favor because you're in menopause, you're not in disease state, and whatever they give you is going to have side effects. Is that really what you want? Like, I can give an example of a client, Colette, who went to her doctor to talk about hormones, and she came out with a cholesterol medication. And she goes, what about my hormones? And the doctor says, well, we'll talk about that next time. So unfortunately, it's just not their forte. They're a general practitioner that's there to deal with disease state. Hormones are not their specialty. It's not. I talk hormones every day. They talk general practice with, clients of all different ages. It's just not what they're there for. And they're not going to do proper testing, because if they do testing, it's going to be blood work, and it's not going to give you the right pathway. Or, as I said, they're going to randomly choose medication because we're making assumptions that, the male client must be low in testosterone and the female client must be low in estrogen and progesterone, and that's what we're going to put them on. In Gwen's situation, which happens commonly, is you get onto HRT, and then it's a time frame, and after, on average, 5 years, they pull the carpet out, and then you're back to ground zero again with no support system. It's just pulled out.
Interesting. I guess, what are some signs that someone may experience, if they have low or even high estrogen? Like, what are some of the symptoms that they might have that you would see?
Well, for women, it's very typical. It's hot flashes, brain fog, lack of clarity, some moodiness and irritability, definitely weight gain. For men, the big factor that they're going to notice is the weight gain in their tummy. However, understand that high estrogen for women or low estrogen can actually cause similar symptoms. They could have normal estrogen, but be estrogen dominant because their progesterone is extremely low. So you're always looking at more than one variable. For women, you're looking at estrogen and progesterone actually together, because they're partners. And for men, you're looking at the estrogen testosterone factor and how both of those are affecting each other.
Interesting. Simone, I felt like
Does that clarify?
I hope so. Did for me.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm trying to teach is we can't always compartmentalize certain symptoms into certain hormones because there's an overlap. So you could get similar symptoms with low progesterone as you could get with high estrogen. Low progesterone, you know, for women, say in their mid-40s, probably progesterone could be a good choice for them at that time, because that's typically what's happening, is their progesterone could be going low, which starts to cause a lot of symptoms. Even adrenal fatigue, one of my chapters in the book is adrenal fatigue, if only we knew. And this goes to men too. If only we knew in our late 40s, early 50s, we would start doing something to support our adrenal gland, because we understand the progression of what's going to happen now as we go through our 50s. And then our body would be much more prepared to go through those stages of life.
I'm assuming most of the people on this call are regular exercisers. So, you know, we do everything healthy, or at least I try to eat healthy, exercise regularly. How important is that, in your opinion? Or does it even matter? Like, can your hormones still be out of whack if you're doing all that amazing stuff? You're eating healthy and you're exercising every single day.
Oh, your hormones will still be out of balance. But however, as I would say to them, you have some great tools in place. You don't want to just do one thing and not the other. However, if you exercise and you have great nutrition and you're not balancing hormones, yes, your hormones will be out of balance. There's no, you can't correct that on your own without some sort of support system. I can give you examples of clients that, you know, they're retired, they're 2 years post-retired, and their cortisol is still high because their body doesn't know what to do. So their mind frame is changed, and their mindset and their lifestyle is quiet, but their cortisol is still high. So similar to the client that works out, as they can't control that physiological change of the undercurrent of their hormones. Will they balance out better than someone that's not exercising? I think so.
Right.
I think so. I like I said, I teach the 4 pillars. I don't tell people how to exercise. That's not my expertise, but I encourage them to find something that speaks to them. To, you know, sometimes, of course, it's not their first go-to if they're very overweight. It's hard, it's difficult. However, even if they started walking, it would make a difference for them.
Perfect. Yeah. One of the first parts of our program, and we teach a lot of people, is just get walking, right? Walk before you run. So if they're really new to exercise, like, hey, we just want you to do steps. And it's very individualized, but it's usually 10,000 steps a day if they're a pretty healthy person. Pretty easy to start getting going with a fitness program that way. So yeah, so I love how you said that, like just go for a walk sometimes, right? And just get yourself moving. There's also a lot of, you know, different types of testing. I know you're big on the saliva testing, but how would you compare the saliva test versus like traditional blood testing?
Blood testing isn't accurate. So we're really looking at apples and oranges. When you do a saliva test, you're testing hormones at a cellular level. And when you do blood work, your blood is a transport system. So the hormones are constantly moving in and out and in and out, in and out. So it's not going to give you an accurate picture by any means. If, for example, someone tests high in estrogen through blood, that tells me that their estrogen is extremely high, because now it's spilling over into the blood system to try to eliminate itself through the lymphatics. So then, yeah, their hormones, that hormone level is very high for them. It's just not an accurate test. It doesn't allow you, it doesn't give you the information that you would need to put a proper program together. So in the beginning, when I was making the bioidentical hormones, in the beginning, I did allow the blood work, and I stopped doing it because it's just not accurate. It's, again, it's all about accuracy and not guessing and making assumptions.
So you could go to your family doctor and ask for this saliva test?
No,
Okay.
no, it's not mainstream medicine. It's a kit that we have that we give the clients.
Let's say someone isn't able to go through you to get this kit. how would they go about obtaining a saliva test? Could they just do like a simple Google search, find someone near them, like a facility or pharmacy?
Well, it has to be sold through a qualified practitioner. So even the lab that I work with, there's only certain accreditations that they will allow to be clinicians to be selling the kit to the clients. I think, I mean, that's just their protocols as a medical lab. If we kind of look at the flip side of that, if somebody was able to get a kit online, what would they do with it? You know, like when I do a test for a client and the results come back before our next appointment, I always scan them their results. And you know what they always say to me? I said, "Did you get your test results?" "Yeah, I didn't understand it." I go, "I know, but that's okay. Like, it is your test and it is how we're framing the call today. So you are entitled to those results." So it's just, even if you had that information in your hand, you wouldn't know what to do with it. You wouldn't know how to read it. You wouldn't know what to pick as a solution for yourself. It takes an expert to put the programs together. If that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, certainly. Even when I get my blood work back, I can look at it, but it's hard to interpret the information. So it's probably definitely applies for that as well.
Yeah. That's a good question though.
Great question. Yeah, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to type them in the chat.
There is someone that mentioned something else in the chat before. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. Kelly, can you see the chat?
I've been letting you read them, sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Oh, I hear. Okay, Gwyneth. Yeah, sorry, we missed Gwyneth's follow-up question. I just feel that I need something. My skin has become so fragile since the removal of HRT therapy, hair loss, vaginal bleeding. So I guess where do I go for hormone testing?
Well, your body's going through a withdrawal effect of the discontinuation of that medication. So unfortunately, sometimes you're going to see, like I mentioned, you're going to go back to ground zero, basically, when that drug is withdrawn. But understand that drugs also falsify results because it's a band-aid effect. It's not, your body isn't really in balance when it's on that medication. I always encourage clients, men and women, to do their best to balance their hormones naturally because it is the safest route for them to take. So again, it's all about getting that my perspective is it's getting up the hormone test. And I know Mike's going to be putting some information in the chat, just about getting more personal information, you know, for yourself as an individual.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. So if anybody's interested in the test, like, I mean, I can type those in the chat. If you have any more questions,
like often what happens, you know, just because Gwen's asked that question, is if clients come to me, for example, I always, the first step is for them to fill out what I call the menopause or the andropause quiz. From that quiz, it provides me with a lot of information to basically frame a discovery call to understand, prior to meeting that client, what their areas of concern are and what their struggles are. Then when we get on a discovery call, we go through the quiz, whether it's an andropause or menopause quiz. And then we just start to have an open conversation, on a one-on-one conversation where, as I said, I feel that it gives that client the opportunity to really tell me their story a little bit more in depth of what their experience has been, what their medical history is. And if they want to, they're not obligated, but if they want to move on to purchasing the saliva package from me, then they can. But that's a personal choice. I say start with the quiz, start with a complimentary discovery call, and just start gathering information for yourself. Whether you go to that step of the saliva kit is entirely that client's choice.
Okay, so that's great. So you do that discovery call as well. Okay, awesome. I love that. I by the way, I put the links in the chat. So if anybody wants to do the quiz, feel free to copy that. I'll share my screen in a little bit as well if you want to screenshot it. And we do have one more question here. How soon after starting a hormone program can you start to see results?
My personal experience with clients is within 2 weeks, they're going to see changes. And I'm being very, very honest and transparent. When you get your chemistry, that template of that saliva test, you marry it with their health assessment. So now you're looking at their health history, their medication that they're on. You're putting together a very specific therapeutic program based on that saliva test and the health assessment, and you're dosing it according to those results. They're going to get really good results. And I do get results within a 2-week window. Obviously, not everything's going to be resolved. That's not reality. However, I know they're going to see changes because I'm working with therapeutic concentrated herbal supplements that work extremely well for the clients. And often women and men, they're surprised because they don't really have any expectation of what it's going to feel like. And often I think people don't realize how bad they're feeling until they get to the other side and start to feel better.
Yeah, I love that. Any other questions? Feel free to answer away or ask away. Appreciate everybody on the call here. We're going to wrap up in a few more minutes. But if there are any more questions, yeah, absolutely fire away. What I'll do is just while we wait, if there's any more, I'll share my screen. I'll just put the links up on the screen as well. It's just a little Word doc. So if anybody wants to see that, they can.
I have another question. You mentioned when it comes to menopause, and I'm still getting used to the other term, and andropause.
Andropause?
Yeah, because I've heard some people say, oh, it's maybe not a thing, but of course men go through their stages of life as well. So do you think it is under the umbrella of it's absolutely not a myth, it is as serious as menopause?
I think it's just as serious as menopause. I believe men suffer in silence. I'm being very honest with you. When men come to me, they're just so grateful to find someone that's willing to listen and understand, because the doctor's not helping. No, I think men suffer in silence. And I'm always encouraging women to bring their partners in because it makes sense, right? If you're in a relationship and you're going to balance your hormones and you're going to feel awesome and better, and your libido is going to improve, don't you want the same for your partner? And really what we're doing is not only are we balancing hormones, we're optimizing health, because when you balance hormones, it has that undercurrent and flow to so many areas that are being affected by hormones, like all those different disease states that I mentioned as well. So it's a real full package of support for your body when you balance out your hormones. But andropause is very real.
Okay. And then we have a question, not sure if this was covered, but what if you had a hysterectomy, no hormone replacements taken?
What would you do?
Yeah, I guess. What would you do in that case?
Natural supplements are ideal. I've had so many different scenarios of women that came to me knowing that they were going to get a hysterectomy, and we were preparing their body for that. Women who came to me after being pulled off HRT women who have come to me, as you're saying, that have not done any HRT, which is fine. Women that have come to me that have been on fertility drugs. There's a lot of different pictures that are painted when people come to you and tell you their history. So even though this person asking the question has had no HRT, they're still a great candidate. The good thing is they haven't been on any medication, really.
Okay.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah. And I feel like I have another one. They just keep coming. But our
Pleasure.
participant said, thank you. Thank you for answering that
My
question.
pleasure.
And another question I had was, right, you mentioned some people will go through menopause and then sometimes they'll just start exercising maybe too aggressively, right? And maybe it's not the best thing to do. And of course, everyone's different and they need to get the samples done of their saliva to really know what their roadmap is. But is there any, I guess, absolutes that you could deter people from doing, knowing that they're going through menopause? Like, I would avoid X, Y, and Z if you're in this state right now.
I would avoid making any assumptions. I'll give you an example. I had a girlfriend at home that assumed that she was low in estrogen and started drinking soya milk. You know, people go out and buy supplements because, again, a lot of the focus, and Mike's asked those questions because that's what we think, is it's all about estrogen and testosterone. But it's really not. If I was going through menopause or andropause, I would start watching my nutrition and my carb intake. What is the value of my nutrition? Am I eating properly? Am I implementing good strategies in my life for stress management in the hopes that it will help my cortisol? I think there's a number of things that we can start to do, and every step to me, every step makes a difference. Every little thing that you do, you know, like today I exercise and I went up to 15 reps instead of 12. Like everything makes a difference in your life. Small, steady.
And then someone said, is the treatment gentle or harsh? What could I expect? I'm assuming they're talking about the I forgot the term already, HRT therapy maybe? Or just in terms of the
No, I
2
did.
week change?
That's a good question, but I just want to clarify. I don't work with hormone replacement therapy at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I did do the bioidenticals for 10 years. But even when I was doing that, I was working with supplements. So I don't work with any drug, any medication at all. I'm working solely with concentrated natural supplements. Is it harsh? My experience for clients is it's not a harsh process. Are some clients resistant? Maybe a few, but again, that's part of that is their mindset and their history that they're bringing to you. If they're coming to you and they're on, you know, a lot of medication, it's going to be a different journey than someone coming to you that's on zero. However, I've worked very successfully with clients on a lot of medication with the understanding that I'm not interfering with any of the medication. What we're working to do is to bring in a different line of treatment that's going to provide a totally different foundation of support that's also going to help to release some of the side effects. Natural supplements are classified as food. They're not drug-based. So you don't even have that language of side effects, because that's more related to drug therapies. Will people, does the odd person get a headache? Maybe. You know, because maybe they're also at the same time as taking the supplements, they're working towards removing a lot of carbs and bad things from their diet. Maybe they're eliminating pot. So you know, you have to look at what they're doing in all different pillars of their health, you know, that's going to work in conjunction with that program. Does that answer?
I don't know. Next time, let us know if that answered your question or if you wanted to expand on that and any other things. Oh, it looks like she said thank you. So that's good.
How often would, so let's say let's say I do a test and I do my first test with you, and you know, maybe you recommend that I just eliminate pop and maybe take this one supplement or whatever it might be, or eat healthier. How often would you retest me to see where my levels would be or at?
Well, what I explain to clients is it's often a one-time test.
Oh,
it's
okay.
a one-time, and like unless some clients like to do it every year, for example, but that's their personal choice. What I say to them is, if you're feeling really well and you're seeing your symptoms resolve, is there really a need to do that test? I say no. You know, just let's keep rolling with what we're doing, and just keep monitoring, you know, the success that you've had at this time. But I just want to clarify to your question too, that when people do the test, it's often a multi-targeted program. So it's not one supplement. Because if you're testing 5 hormones, then you're not gonna, you know, just say for a gentleman, for example, their big concern is going to be testosterone. Well, if their estrogen and their cortisol is high, we're going to treat those areas too, because all those hormones are working in conjunction, and they talk to each other, and that's biochemistry and the biofeedback of our body and how it's always trying to rebalance itself out. And the test is going to tell you what's going on with your thyroid function without testing your thyroid. It's an indirect test of your thyroid, because estrogen and cortisol also affect your thyroid function. So you're really getting more information than just those 5 hormones.
Can you quickly walk us through like the saliva test? Because I think that's the main test that you would do.
Yeah.
How easy or how hard is it to do this test? Or how long does it take?
It's the nice thing about it is you do it at home. So you don't go to the lab. It's a home kit. So it gets shipped right to your home, and it's done first thing in the morning. They like it done between 7 and 7:15, but really I always say to the clients, it goes by what's your circadian rhythm of what time do you get up in the morning, because as soon as you get up in the morning, your cortisol starts to change. So the reason we're doing it in the morning is we want to catch your morning cortisol. So it's one little tube that the client will fill the tube, which is 1 teaspoon. So as soon as they get up in the morning, they won't eat, drink, floss. They'll just fill the tube, put it in the freezer for 2 hours, fill out their paperwork. I often call FedEx for them. It's a priority overnight to the lab in the US. They can either leave it on their doorstep for FedEx to pick up, or they can drop it off. Once the lab gets the results, once the lab gets their test, I get the results back in about 5 to 10 maximum business days. I'm finding it's going a lot faster now, because we're not going to Life Labs. They're out of the equation now. We're going directly to the lab in the US. And then once I get the results back, I connect with the client. I get them to fill out their health assessment. And then we marry that with their test result. And then we get on another call together and talk about options. So it's a really easy test to do.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, so if anybody wants to test or needs the links, they are back in the chat. I also shared my screen earlier. So I guess the way this would work, if anyone is interested, they would connect with you, just go through basically, I think there's about 15 or 20 questions from what I recall when I did it. And then they can book a free discovery call with you. Is that how it works? No obligation for that. You know, if you want to do the saliva test, absolutely go ahead. Maybe it's not even recommended, maybe it is. And then at that point, we can develop a bit of a program in conjunction with their training program as well. So kind of can go hand in hand. So if anybody's, you know, here in a regular fitness program, Kelly and, you know, your fitness trainer or us as a team, In-Home Trainer, can work together with that. So yeah, so hopefully if you're interested, feel free to, I'll pop up those links again, or actually just scroll through the chat. They're there. Make sure you copy those links. And is there anything that we missed asking you, Kelly, or that we should have asked?
I don't know. I think we covered a lot of points here, to be honest. I can't think of anything. Can you?
No, I mean, if anybody wants to follow you or gain more information, I don't know, like, we didn't really share your book at all. I think you have a book on Amazon. Feel free to type it in the chat, or you can, show it up to the screen.
Yeah. Oh, I just I'll put it in the chat. I just want to speak. I want to speak to male andropause. Sorry, I haven't done this for a while.
We've also did some updates, so it's kind of confusing now, Zoom, a little bit.
Yeah, for the first part, it was like
click
on something to enter the chat.
Yeah.
I want to speak to men and their health, and that yes, we want testosterone for libido and a healthy sex life with our partner. However, testosterone is also part of prostate health, and that becomes the bigger picture. Just like high estrogen will put women at risk for breast cancer. So I just want us to look at the broader picture for men too. And that's what I love about working with supplements, is you're really providing a really strong foundation of support for more than one reason. Prostate health is really on, like, prostate cancer and breast cancer are really becoming very prevalent. So I believe, looking at those hormone levels is just another piece of prevention for us. And that's the name of the game to me, is prevention. Doing our best not to go into those disease states and end up on a lot of medication.
Absolutely. Love it. And okay, yeah, so you put it, restore your life, in the chat. Perfect. Oops. And I'll just share my screen one more time if anybody wants to get the links one more time or take a screenshot. Can you guys see the screen here?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so yeah, if anyone wants to take a screenshot, you want to save those links as well, feel free to do that right now. And if you're not training and you're on our email list, you can also do personal training with us at inhometrainer.ca and book a first session with us. So awesome. I think we've taken enough of your time here, Kelly. I don't see any more questions. I appreciate you coming on. It's been wonderful to just have you here. We'll have a recording of this as well if anybody wants to watch it. But once again, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for participating on the call as well. Simone, thank you for asking some great questions, and the rest of you that inputted or put your input here. Very, very, very helpful. So we appreciate all of you in our community and look forward to seeing you on our next event. Thanks you everybody, and thanks Kelly.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. My one last message to people is just to I really feel strongly that we don't have to accept certain things as part of aging. There's always things that we can do to improve our health. And that's why Mike and I were here today, to have this open discussion. But thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're all aging younger. I love it.
Thank you.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mike, for putting this together. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.